I'm actually really excited about this. We have Democratic Congressman from California, Ro Khanna, someone who I've interviewed over the years. It's the first time we've actually met.
I'm really excited to be in studio.
I'm glad you're here. So here we go. Let's talk about this situation regarding TikTok and that which is happening on Capitol Hill. First of all, how do you feel about this? Would you also support this kind of a ban? And do you think there are serious national security concerns through TikTok for the United States?
I am leaning to vote no. I don't support a ban on TikTok for First Amendment reasons. I mean, you have both the left and the right on a platform that is anti-establishment, that is offering views that actually you don't often hear, and sometimes on in the mainstream media. And so I think we have to protect speech. Now, is there a concern about our data being taken by providers that could get to the Chinese Communist Party? Yes, that's a concern not just on TikTok, it's on other platforms that sell to data brokers, which is why we need a data privacy Internet Bill of Rights to address that problem instead of a blanket ban.
How about your constituents? Do you have a read on how they would react to a ban on TikTok, particularly younger constituents?
Well, the younger folks obviously are opposed to it, and people who have used this for making a livelihood are opposed to it. People who have used it for political expression are opposed to it. There are concerns, legitimate concerns about data not getting into the wrong hands, but then the answer should be tailored legislation to address that issue.
Do you think that will be forthcoming?
I hope so. I mean, I called for an Internet Bill of Rights in 2017, and this Congress, we still have not passed something that protects your or my data. So if the question is, if you're going to TikTok, your data shouldn't get into the wrong hands, then address that. Don't say we don't want any of the 170 million people who are on these platforms to have a say.
Okay, let's pivot here and talk about the war on Gaza. After the president's State of the Union speech, I want to read the quote that you gave to the New York Times, to our good friend and reporter Peter Baker. You can't have a policy of giving aid and giving Israel the weapons to bomb the food trucks at the same time. Talk about the tension that you're seeing, the palpable tension that you're seeing within the Biden administration as it looks at this war.
First of all, I thought President Biden was quite strong in his State of the Union on Gaza. He was very strong overall, but this was the most he had talked about Palestinian suffering. He said over 30,000 Palestinians have been killed. He said that the killing has to stop of civilians and called for an immediate ceasefire and conditional on the release of hostages. But we can't continue to give weapons. Haaretz reported over 100 times the United States has shipped weapons. We can't be giving these weapons while we're trying to get aid when Israel is bombing and launching the weapons on the very people who we're trying to give aid to.
Were you aware that the United States was delivering these 100 missions, as you say, these 100 times of giving military aid to Israel? We understand that it was conveyed to Congress, I guess, in a classified briefing. But generally, were you aware?
I was not. And look, I heard, and I'm on the Armed Services Committee, right. I heard Jonathan Capert's excellent interview of the president. He said to the president, what is the red line? The president says, well, I want to give Iron Dome to Israel. Well, many of us support Iron Dome. That's not the issue. No one is against defensive weapons to Israel. Most of these 100 shipments were offensive weapons, precision missiles that Israel is using to kill people in Gaza. That's what needs to stop until we have a permanent ceasefire.
I want to dig into a soundbite that he gave. I'll give the quote that the president gave to Jonathan Capert, since you just mentioned that interview. And he said that an Israeli invasion of Rafah would be a red line, but he wouldn't go as far as cutting off all weapons so they don't have the Iron Dome to protect them. Should there be a red line?
Yes, you can't defy the United States Secretary of Defense, military, and create more of a humanitarian catastrophe when 500,000 people in Gaza are starving, when we're seeing babies and children being malnourished and killed. That red line should be very clear. No weapons, offensive weapons, for launching strikes. That doesn't mean Israel can't have Iron Dome. That doesn't mean we can't protect them against Iran. But we shouldn't be giving Bibi Netanyahu and his extreme right-wing government, which are 10 degrees to, 10 times to the right of Donald Trump. I mean, let's understand this person, Ben Gvir and Bibi. They are far to the right. If anyone Donald Trump's going to appoint, we shouldn't be giving them a blank check to go into Gaza. Some of these people want to annex Gaza.
What do you make of the hot mic moment after the Biden State of the Union in the aisle you know, he was caught saying that he was going to have a come to Jesus moment. He had said so to Bibi Netanyahu. How do you interpret that? What does that mean to you? What do you want from that?
I think the president was speaking honestly. I think the president is very, very frustrated with Bibi Netanyahu. Bibi Netanyahu has been totally ungrateful to this president. The extreme right has been, as the president said, hurting Israel's own standing. Look, many of us believe in the U.S.-Israel relationship, have a voting record of supporting the U.S.-Israel relationship. Bibi Netanyahu is destroying support among voters under 50. And the president, I think, is just speaking honestly. Bibi Netanyahu should be extraordinarily grateful to the president instead of contradicting him and insulting him and his cabinet the times he does. I'd be exasperated if I were President Biden.
What about the border fight? That became a central issue in the State of the Union address, a contentious one. We heard Marjorie Taylor Greene shouting at the president about that. But while the president may be winning the moral argument here, is he winning on this issue politically? I mean, this is a top issue for voters.
It is, and the president needs to keep saying he's the one who wants to fix it. He's the one who wants more funding for Border Patrol agents. He's the one who wants more funding for technology surveillance. He's the one who wants us to be able to process folks before they come to the border. And, Alex, the most important thing, we've got to reduce some of the crippling sanctions on Venezuela. We're sanctioning them, creating economic poverty, and then folks are coming here. What do we expect? What do we expect if we don't have a solution on Haiti? This president actually is proposing solutions, and the Republicans just want the political issue.
What do you expect from Speaker Johnson, who's reportedly going to be meeting with Donald Trump tomorrow or Tuesday to discuss the border issue and others, presumably?
Look, I came into Congress with Mike Johnson. He's a very personable individual, but I'm going to tell you, he's not going to take a single move in Congress that isn't calculated to advance Donald Trump's political interests. If he did, he would have put the border bill for a vote. If he cared about moving the country forward, he would have put the Ukraine bill for a vote. But right now, his focus is, how do I elect Donald Trump president?
Is it fair to say that Donald Trump has gotten into the ear or right in the face of Republicans who've said, we're not going to vote for this bipartisan border bill that was passed by 77 votes in the Senate? We don't want to even bring this up to the House because Donald Trump doesn't want to give Joe Biden a win on this, wants to make it a political issue on which to run for the next 8 months.
Well, that's exactly right, Alex, in terms of why this bill isn't coming for a vote. It's because Donald Trump doesn't want it to come for a vote. But here is how strong Donald Trump is today in the Republican caucus. He is stronger than when I got elected to Congress when he was president of the United States. Then you'd still hear in the hallways people snickering about Trump and saying, look, we're not with him. Today, no one criticizes him. He doesn't need to make phone calls.
Wait a minute. Really? Nobody? Because I've gotten time and time again from Democrats and Republicans saying what is said in the private offices or between friends about Donald Trump is usually not very flattering and that they don't buy him. You don't hear that any longer?
That has changed. I mean,
Really?
No one may be an exaggeration, but certainly very few do. The vast majority of the Republican caucus now is much more aligned with Donald Trump. That wasn't the case in 2017, 2018. So Donald Trump doesn't need to make phone calls to every member of Congress. This is his party. And I think the president is right in the way he framed it in the State of the Union. These are two different visions of America. We're running against not just Donald Trump, but his party. This is his Congress. This is his folks in the Senate. He's pushed out the Liz Cheneys. He's pushing out the McConnells. And this is what's so scary if he wins the presidential election.
All right. Thank you for coming to the studio. I look forward to seeing you again via Zoom or whatever it's going to be, but in studio.